All right. This video, we're going to be walking through the Roamin Home Nomad Tent. So if you've been on the fence about getting a wall tent, this is a video you want to pull up a seat on. Now, Roamin Homes, they do make two wall tents. This one, which is the larger of the two, is a 4-person tent. They also have a smaller one as well, which is called the Drifter, and that is a 2-person tent. Now, all their tents are made right here in the United States. It's actually a company up in Utah. So every time you buy one of these, you're supporting jobs, economy right here in the U.S. Now, as I mentioned, this is going to be a complete A to Z video. If you want to just skip to the commentary part versus see me set this thing up, I'll put a little time thing down at the bottom of the screen here. You can just move the play button to there. Now, I'm setting up the floor right now. Everything comes neatly organized, and you're going to find everything is color coordinated, so it makes it super easy to put this thing together. And it does include a waterproof manual, which does show you in this right here. You'll see me referencing the manual. I haven't quite remembered yet the number of poles because each one of these legs going up, there's a particular sequence of poles that goes with it for the height of it. So the book makes it super easy to figure that out. Everything's all color coordinated. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to position the tent in the front, and in a moment what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go around. I'm going to put the stakes in the bottom of the tent. I'm going to do the outer corners first, get everything all nice and straight, and all the stakes I'm going to be putting into the ground about 3 to 4 inches hanging out, with the exception of the one near the door, which I will hammer into the ground to where there's about 1 inch hanging or up out of the ground. I'm going to put all the stakes in, and what I'm doing next is putting the guide ropes on each of the rods here, and that's just going to make it easier, so when I go around, everything's all there ready for me to put it all together. All right, putting out the outer corners, and what I'll do here first, I'm going to bring the center pole right up in the top. That's going to give this that kind of circusy looking tent feel to it. Next, I'm going to put the door pole in, and from there I'm just going to go around and get the rest of the poles all set up on this here. I don't think I did any particular sequence. Now, one thing you do want to do, you'll notice on the seams of the tent, as you're putting your guidelines down, you want to put your guidelines down kind of following the same direction as the seams in the roof of the tent, and that's going to make things a little bit more simpatico, shall we say. And once everything is all done, I'm just going to go around and make some final adjustments to tweak the positioning of the guidelines to get things as taut and tight as it needs to be. All right, next we're going to jump inside. We're going to get the wood stove set up. Full disclosure, this is actually my first time setting up this stove. So this stove at this point is brand new. Now, these stoves are actually made by the same company. So again, they're made in USA. This has to be one of the more rugged stoves that I have used. All the pipes are all laid out really nice. So there's actually only one way to put them up. It has the little spark collector thing right inside the lower pipe there. Really well designed. And one of the things that I really enjoy about this particular stove is its size, depth. It really does hold quite a bit of fuel. And as you can see there, it's 37 degrees inside the tent. So you're going to find out just how quickly the stove heats this space up. Now, one thing I do want to point out, if this is your first time using the stove, like in this particular case right here, you're going to want to open up some windows and let some ventilation in, because they use this special paint on these types of stoves and so forth. And for the first burn, it's going to smoke quite a bit, and it does it for roughly about 15-20 minutes, if even that. And in this particular case, it was about that 15-20 minutes, and then it just stops. But I will say this here, this stove puts out an insane amount of heat. All right, so we made it up to Big Bear, and friends, this was a trip that almost didn't happen. And let me expound on that before we get into the tent that I'm in and what we're testing out this little trip right here. So I left my home about 2 p.m. today with the idea that I should be able to get up to Big Bear roughly in about 2 hours or so. Usually around that time, it's that sweet area of time where most people are working and most are not on the roads. Well, I was mistaken, because right off the get-go I hit a ton of traffic, and then I noticed that one of the main drags heading up to Big Bear was closed. And so I reached out to a buddy of mine. He recommended a couple camping spots that were further down the hill, and I decided, okay, that was a lot closer, so I tried both of those. Both of those had road closures as well, so you weren't able to get up into there. So I ended up going through the backside of Big Bear, went to our normal south locations that we usually camp at. That road was closed. Now it's beginning to snow a bit, and I'm in an Infinity QX80, which is just simply a rental. More on my truck situation here in another video, but at any rate, so this is a glorified, I think, a Nissan Patrol, something like that. But I have to say, hey, the truck is performed really, really well for being a stock truck. So I had reserves about going off-road with it because it has stock tires, and I didn't bring any traction boards with me. Yeah, I didn't think that one through. But anyway, with that location closed, I decided to try to hit up Yellow Post 5. Well, I made it back there, and somebody was in there. So now at this point, my only option at that point was Yellow Post 6, which was pretty much 4 miles further away from the pavement. So that was a little bit of a gamble. Again, I'm in a stock truck. I'm not sure how long it was going to be snowing out, and I decided, all right, I've been on the road for a number of hours as it is. What the hell, go for it. So made it back to Yellow Post 6. Awesome. It was available, and as you'll see with this video, once I started getting set up, or I'm sorry, on location here, it started snowing on and off and so forth, which was pretty fun. And at any rate, so we are in a Nomad, well actually this is a Roamin Home Nomad canvas wall tent, and this thing is absolutely, now wall tents, these are a little different animal than the typical type of tents that you see me heading out with. Now, there is a little bit more of a setup time with this, but there are some benefits. You have these massively tall ceiling in here, and it is quite large in here. Now, one of the things that I have in here, and pardon my wet boots and my sandals, and I'm just going the barefoot right now, but this is one of the wood stoves that these guys make as well, and this was actually the first time firing this thing up here, and I kid you not, we are, let's see, we are 69 degrees in here right now, and it is, oops, let me get back in front of frame there. It's about 24 degrees outside right now. Now, also, one of the other items that I am testing out here, which many of you have requested, which I will have a standalone video on that, is the Sparks Overland. This is a prototype diesel heater that a couple months ago I did a introductory video of that, and so this is actually the maiden voyage of that, and yeah, it's kicking off some heat here. But at any rate, that's what this video is about, or this trip was about, is mainly two things. Well, first off, come up here. This is actually my first time in this tent in the snow, and I'm pretty excited about that. Okay, so we're going to continue on with this Roamin tent, Nomad tent review this morning here. Last night after dinner, it was already about 11:30, and it was absolutely, man, I was checked out. It was time to go to bed. So anyway, this works out better anyway. We have a little bit better lighting. So a couple things that I want to discuss about Well, first we'll discuss about wall tents, because many of you have asked, what are the pros and cons to a wall tent? And really, at the end of the day, the only cons that I'm going to bring up here is, which is what most are going to care about, is going to be setup time. The setup time with a tent like this, though these guys make it extremely easy, because everything's all color coded. All these poles that are holding up the frame for this tent are color coded, so you can fly right through it. And as you notice, when I was setting up the tent, I did reference the cheat sheet. Yes, there's a manual. It's a waterproof manual that they include with it. And I was referencing, I always forget the poles, because each pole has a certain number of sections to it, and that is going to help you set this up really fast. Other than that, it's crazy easy. The two outer corners, you're going to set up first. You're going to put your guidelines down through, and then once you have those guidelines down through, you're going to come through here. This main pole you're going to set up next, and then the door pole, and then you just go around and set up all the rest of the guidelines as well. But at any rate, with that said, now there are a ton of pros that come along with a wall tent like this. Need I say, the size of this is absolutely massive. I mean, it is a tremendous, last night I mentioned the tall ceiling, which is about 10.5 feet tall, which is the tallest out of any of the tents. Yeah, that's even higher. That's even higher than the Sunmez Outdoors tents that you often see me heading out with. So that's a massive height inside of here, and it really creates this kind of grand feeling. During the summer, you have ventilation, so the canvas does breathe really nice. Yeah, it's huge. Anyway, so we're talking about, speaking of size, we're talking about 15.5 feet wide for this particular tent right here. Now, this is their Nomad tent. You're talking about 10.5 feet wide. You have two massive windows, or I'm sorry, well, let me clarify that. You have one massive window on each side, and you do have heavy-duty zippers. Each zipper does have this orange grip on it, so it makes it easy to find. You have two large windows in the back. You have one large window in the front, and then of course you have your door. Now the door does have Velcro on the side, so you can actually roll that up as well if you don't want to use the door. One of the things, and actually I'm reminded, the main support rod, I'm not sure what they call it, I'll put it on the screen here, just have a couple these little arms that come along with it, so you can position them as you wish. I have a pot on this one, and I was hanging socks up on that one. Now let's talk about the construction of this tent itself. Now if you look around on where the main stress points are on the tent, it's reinforced. So 1, 2, and I'm sorry, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, there's 7 points where this thing is really, the canvas is doubled up quite a bit. And then one thing I really admire as well, I'm going to grab this camera right here, is the reinforcement and the construction that they use, not only for the nose of the tent, I'm not sure if that's the official name, I'm going to call it that for now, but then also the grommet that is going around the stovepipe itself. It is actually really, really fantastic. Now they do have a rope that's attached to the actual cover, so once you get the location, if you could be using the stove, you just pull the rope down and it removes that from the top there itself. Now I will say this, the stove that this company sells and makes as well is an absolute unit. Okay, this stove I had running, I'm gonna guess it went out, well, it was still warm this morning, so it never really fully went out. But this thing, the last I had filled it full of wood was right around 12:30 a.m. And I stuck a cardboard box in it this morning. But man, this thing really, between this and, as I was sharing yesterday, you can probably hear the Sparks Overland heater winding away because that's still running right now. Between these two, it's funny because I was running I was running those 4-hour energy logs, or I think, you know what, actually, I'm not even sure those were. That was just compressed wood that I was tossing in there. But at any rate, at one point, it was 98 degrees inside of this tent. Now, mind you, it's about 22 degrees, or at the time, it was 22 degrees outside. So it was, it was warm in here. And so, at any rate, at the end of the day, when you're shopping for a canvas tent, now, are all canvas tents created equally? No, absolutely not. A handful that I've tested over the years, there's only been 2 that really stood out to me. In some of the articles I mentioned on 4-wheel drive talk, I talk about growing up, my neighbor had a canvas tent, and that thing was built like a tank. Now, I don't remember the name of it, but that tent, we'll call it Tent X. That tent, man, for the 5 years that I knew before I moved away to heading off to the service, that tent was an absolute warrior. And I've tested some other ones, over the years, and I didn't care for them because they were made in overseas. Now, this tent right here has a 10-ounce marine treated Sunforger canvas, which is very, very durable. In a moment, I'm going to go outside and I'll share with you the outsides of the tent itself. But the tent is, it is really well constructed. It's actually built, which I've mentioned in prior articles. Well, if you've not read the articles, then you're hearing about it here. It's actually a family-owned business up in Utah. The tents were designed by hunters, cowboys, for hunters, cowboys, or overlanders. They're really, these people take a lot of pride in the products that they go pushing out. Their tents, they actually have a couple different sizes. But I've met these guys on a handful of times and just really stand up people, which I think is important when you're buying a product like that. Now, one thing I do want to point out, they do have different floor options. Now, the tent is going to come with no floor in it, so you have the option of either this mesh. Now, keep in mind, I did bring just a cheapo tarp I picked up off of Amazon, but so that's underneath that, which actually worked out good with the snow underneath there. But at any rate, you have this mesh right here. These things are actually really, I love these things during the summer months and so forth, when you don't have snow on the ground. Any sort of dust, debris, and so forth is going to actually fall through this. Now, they do have a more solid option as well. Again, when you're on the ordering page, you can go through it and you'll see there's a couple different options for the type of flooring that you want, if you want to use any sort of flooring at all. Okay, getting out of the tent, quite easy. You have this heavy-duty zipper. Okay, and oh yeah, here we are right now. It is about 64 degrees in there, and it is 31 degrees outside right now. It is cold, friends. All right, so here is the outside of this tent here. And so as you can see, we have, oh, it's funny, we have ice built up, which I will have to knock off here momentarily, because of course when I'm packing the tent away, I want to make sure remove as much of the moisture as possible, and that's going to help us avoid any sort of mold situations in the future. But as you can see outside, the tent is as grand as it is. Actually the inside feels a little bit more big, if that makes sense. You have a little bit more of a grand feeling inside, because it's funny, on the outside, it looks like a big tent, but certainly, in my opinion, the inside is where this thing punches way out of its weight class. But you can see all the guidelines right here, and all of this stuff, again, they have these heavy-duty guidelines, which are absolutely fantastic. And this is what I was talking about. If you look at this, is a black, green, and back here on the front we have yellow. So again, everything is all color coordinated. You have red right here. You have the 2 red ones right up on the front. And incidentally, coinciding with the red guidelines. Now these are a little bit longer, and just as those are longer, the main one right here, oops, The main one holding up the door pole right there, that is obviously a much longer guideline as well. Actually, that's a twofer right there. So you'll see there's actually 2 lines coming off that one. So it also makes it easier when you're taking things out and getting things all set up. Again, front, you have yellows. Sides, you have the black. I think we have a couple blacks in the back as well. Again, there's the green. Yeah, here we go. So 1 black. The center in the back is blue and black. So again, and here's that footprint. So you can get a sense of what we're working with right here. And another thing that is really fantastic about a tent like this, as that wind is kind of brushing up against me right there, reminded that with this sort of design right here, it really works well in heavy winds. But overall, man, this tent is an absolute rock star. And so what I will do is I'll put links down below to the website, Roamin Home Tent. And yeah, I would encourage you to go check them out. And one of the things, before I go closing off here, you know, when you're buying a wall tent like this, and this is the reason why, you know, again, when you buy something out of America, made by Americans, you are going to pay a little bit more, but there's a certain degree of quality, which I mentioned a moment ago, and also longevity. So one of the things that I admire about this company here is they have a couple tents that have been out in the elements, again, in Utah for the last nearly 3 years. And these tents are on a regular basis dealing with 20-mile-an-hour winds, upwards of 50-mile-an-hour gusts and so forth coming through. And again, we're talking snow, we're talking summer, spring, fall, all the weather, the 4 seasons that they get up there. These tents have been taking a beating. And as I understand, with the exception of right around week number 77, where the tents, the UV and the water treatment needed to be updated, which is to be expected. The tents showed no sign of fatigue, which is pretty awesome. And I'm going to keep pestering them to get updates on that because I'm kind of curious. Most of us are not going to keep tents out that long. I mean, not even close. So that is pretty interesting to see how long they are going to, how long are they going to last being left out there. But anyway, as I was saying, I will leave links and all the contact information to Roamin Home's tents down below. And if you have any questions, by all means, either leave them down below, I'll do what I can to answer them, or reach out to the folks over at Roamin Homes. And that is that. So friends, well, that is all I have, and I will see you in the next video.